Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Community Unitarian Universalist Church in Plano, Texas. So glad you're all out here in person and joining us online. My name is Reverend Dr. Aija Duelm. I'm the minister of this congregation. As Unitarian Universalists, we gather for worship to remind ourselves of who we are and who we want to be, how we want to live, and also we're gathered for worship to stay connected to one another, to connect it also to our dreams of love and justice. Whoever you are, wherever you are on your journey, I'm glad you are here today with us. For a call to worship, I've chosen words by Monica Jacobson Tennyson, the heart of our faith. What is it that calls you here, that calls you onward, that calls you inward, that leads you homeward? What is it that gives you the power to make that change, to ask that question, to take that journey? What is it that says you have done well, that asks you to learn more, that brings you to stillness, that holds you up in hard times? It is relationship, the beating heart of our faith. It begins when we share this hour, our truth, this air, our hearts. So come, let us worship together.
This morning we share with you a quotation from the book, Which Way? A Study of Universalists and Universalism, written by Louis Beals Fisher, a Universalist minister and a dean of Rider Divinity School, which was a forerunner to and then a part of Lombard, which became Meadville Lombard. But this was written in 1921, and it's still a very true statement for you use wherever we are. Universalists are always asked to tell where they stand. The only true answer to give to this question is that we do not stand at all. We move. Or we are asked to state our position. Again, we can only answer that we are on the march. We do not stand still, nor do we defend any immovable positions, theologically speaking. We grow and we march, as all living things forever must do. The main questions with Universalists are not where we stand, but which way are we moving? Not what positions we defend, but which way are we marching?
In the Christian tradition, today marks Palm Sunday. It is a day when Christians commemorate Jesus' triumphal entry in Jerusalem. This is an event that is mentioned in all canonical Gospels, and the name comes for this day comes from the palm branches that the crowd used to wave and greet Jesus, who was riding on a donkey, accompanied by a group of his followers. People shouted verses from the scriptures saying, "The kingdom of our father David is coming," and those verses were said in hopes as they looked forward to the new world that promised to bring goodness, freedom, and hope. In Western Christianity, this day marks the first day of the Holy Week, and most of us know what happens next. The crowd's assertions that the new kingdom is coming was associated with Jesus being the Messiah, who would reestablish the Jewish kingdom, thus threatening the Roman rule and leading to his arrest, death, and then resurrection. This story is the first story that was written down about Jesus' life. And it is about change, about anticipating change with hopes and excitement, and also acknowledging that change comes with grief and loss. We too are on the brink of change, anticipating new things around the corner, new relationships, new place to live or work, new ways to live or work, new experiences, new things to learn. Throughout our lives, we have changed and gone through many changes. We just talked earlier about how many clothes we've changed, but also we ourselves have changed. And we best see how we have changed when we look back 2 years ago, when you look back at the pictures or recordings of yourself and remember who you were then, what you believed then, how you saw the world then, and you compare it to who you are now, and you might actually like who you have become today. Things that have changed, things that you've learned, things you have understood through these years. So now, there's another change that is knocking on our doorstep. Are we ready to embrace it? To celebrate it? Are we ready to rejoice in excitement about who will we be tomorrow? And I know that sometimes change is actually a bit threatening to experience. We're not always eager, even if we like what we have become after we've changed. When we are faced with another change, there is a hesitancy in us. There's a little bit of fear about what it will cost us to get there. But nevertheless, there's this cliche statement that the only thing that is constant is the change. And so here we are, amidst another change. And I'm talking about the change in our faith, as our denomination is also in the middle of change. We're moving, we're not standing still, as Louis Fisher said. Most of you know that we've been talking about Article 2 changes for this is our second year to talk about those changes. And what Article 2 is the section in the bylaws of our denomination that describes the purpose and principles of our denomination, who we are, why we are here, who we are about. Most of us know this section as principles and sources, and that's what the language we use. We rarely say Article 2 when we talk about our principles and sources. Since the change is coming, I would like to invite you to look back into history. And some of you may remember the year 1975 when this church was founded. And some of you might know it from your studies. How many principles were there in 1975?
I think 6.
6. Really good guess. Yes, there were 6 principles. That's it. There were no sources. It was 6 principles. Free search for truth, worth and dignity, justice and peace, to service member churches, to encourage cooperation across the world, and to cherish and spread the truth taught by the great prophets and teachers of humanity as summarized in the Judeo-Christian heritage. That is it. And the interesting part is that these principles didn't come into existence without a lot of work and a lot of effort and conversations. And I want to give you an example. At the meeting in Syracuse, when they were trying to work through the consolidation process of Unitarians and Universalists consolidating together, merging together, there were 57 amendments of these principles. Each of them had to be moved, seconded, and debated on the floor. We have kept it, right? Democracy at its core. We've kept it. We talk about all of these things until we decide. And this last principle about the prophets of Judeo-Christian tradition was the one that had caused a deadlock. And it was threatening to derail the whole consolidation process. We almost did not have a Unitarian Universalist association. The debate had continued, and there was this not predicted debate. They stayed over time. They continued to talk about it. The time that wasn't scheduled even was started at 8 p.m., and they continued until 1:30 a.m. with almost all 600 voting delegates still sitting in their seats. And they still did not have a final vote. Had they voted at that time, it would have been over. It would not have worked. They didn't. They adjourned at the time. Donald Harrington remembers that night, about 3 a.m., he got a knock on his door with another wording proposal. People were hoping to save this consolidation, and they worked it out in the end. They finally did agree on these 6 principles. That is until 1985. Because in 1985, the words that people had fought over all day and night, nobody could even remember. They also did not serve the needs of the association anymore. So these initial 6 principles were replaced, adopted overwhelmingly in 1986. It usually takes 2 years to change our bylaws. So the ideas from the early principles were still present, worded differently, and some things were added, right? So we have quite a few changes. Our bylaws require that we re-examine our bylaws, our principles, every 15 years. We have not been good at doing that, have we? Throughout the years, we've managed to change a word or a phrase, like we added the word people in 2017 to say not only men and women, but all people. And we added a source in 1995 to include earth-centered. So if you look at our current hymnals that we have the first edition. They were printed before the addition of this last source. So you will not see that final source in our hymnals. But I would like for us to look at what we have, as it is of today, before we start considering what might come next. And here's the part where I would like Sandy's help. Mina made this. I borrowed an illustration from Spirit Play. If you know, this is a curriculum for children that we have and have used. I think this is understandable that this is a tree, and we will decorate it with our principles and our sources. So let's think about our first principles. Do you know what our first principle is? Worth and dignity. Yes. You start putting it up. Worth and dignity. Our second one. Oh, we have hymnals. Let's see if we know our principles, right? Justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. That is our second principle. Spiritual growth is the next one, right? Acceptance of one another and encouragement of spiritual growth in our congregations. Next one. Free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And then the next one is the right of conscience and the use of democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. We have two more. The goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. And the last one. Yes, yes. Respect for the independent web of all existence of which we are a part. So, we also have some sources, right? What do we know? What are our sources? How do we know?
Jewish and Christian teaching.
Jewish and Christian teachings which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves. We got Jewish and Christian teachings, and we will put them as roots because this is what is grounding us. This is where we get the wisdom. What else do we have there?
Direct experience.
Direct experiences of that transcending mystery and wonder that is affirmed in all, I believe so, yes. Doesn't it say? Yeah, wonder and awe, yes.
I was pretty sure that was wonder and awe.
Yes, wonder and awe, yes. Okay, what else do we have? What other sources do we have?
Earth-centered teachings.
Earth-centered traditions which celebrate the sacred circle of life and instruct us to live in harmony with the rhythms of nature. Okay, what else? Humanist teachings, which counsel us to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science and warn us against the idolatries of the mind and spirit. And then there are more. There are two more. Anybody?
World religion.
World religions. And this symbol that Sandy is putting up has symbols of many different religions. And on the back of it, there's a cheat sheet of what those symbols mean in case you would like to look it up. Last one. Words and deeds of prophetic people, which challenge us to confront powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. So this is what our current principles and sources look like. Many of us are familiar with this, I'm hoping. For some of us, this might be new because we haven't been that long in this denomination. So I think it's important to know where we come from before we start moving and talking about what might come next. As I mentioned, our bylaws require that we examine our principles and sources every 15 years. There have been those few changes that I mentioned, but there have been so many changes proposed and other changes that never got adopted. One of the principles that we most likely know about is the 8th principle that was proposed about anti-racism commitment. And in 2020 General Assembly, which is our main conference or gathering for all of the UU churches, the decision was made to, rather than continuing to make these piecemeal changes to the principles, to reconsider how we articulate our faith altogether. So we all voted to establish the Article 2 Study Commission and explore what our Article 2 could look like, our principles and sources could look like at this time, day, and age that we live in. So the team, this study commission team, worked for 2 years to study the issues involved, and they published the proposal in 2022, so 2 years ago. And at the GA, people were voting. We were voting, do we like their proposal? Do we want to keep studying it? Or do we just not like it and start over? And we voted to keep studying it. There was enough in that proposal that said, I want to learn more and see how we can make this work for us all. So we've studied, and this is the year that we will vote whether to adopt them or not. So there have been some minor changes and tweaks added to original proposal that came 2 years ago. There are still a few more proposals to make a few changes to it, but the proposal is published. This is what it will look like in June for us to vote on. Do we see this work for us? So let's look at it. What is this proposal? And you have insert, which if you like to read the details, you will see what is being proposed. So instead of using the language of principles, the proposal uses language of values and says that we are about these particular values. So we will again decorate our tree, and we will draw on this image that Tanya Webster created that looks like a flower. And Sandy will decorate our tree to help the tree bloom. The first one that the proposal says is that love is at the center. And we will put love on the trunk.
Yes.
That is our center, that is our core value. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love. That's the proposal. And then the values are interdependence. We honor the interdependent web of all existence. We covenant to cherish Earth and all beings by creating and nurturing relationships of care and respect. The next one is pluralism. That we celebrate that we all are sacred beings, diverse in culture, experiences, and theology. We covenant to learn from one another in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. The next one, and I know this is more like a class than a sermon, justice. And this justice section also includes a sentence that we support the use of inclusive democratic processes to make decisions. The next value is transformation. We cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope, and our generosity connects us to one another in relationships of interdependence and mutuality. And the last one, equity. We declare that every person has the right to flourish with inherent dignity and worthiness. Did I skip generosity?
We have one more.
I skipped generosity? Well, okay, I need to redo the class. So we had transformation, that we adapt to changing world, transform and grow spiritually, and then generosity, right? That spirit of gratitude and hope. All right. This is why there's a written copy, right? It's not yet in our minds and hearts. It's still on a paper right now. We're still exploring what that means. But if you noticed, many of the words resonate with the same principle language that we had. There's a lot of similarities to what we had before to what it is proposed to be today. So I would like to invite us to consider how it is to move through the change. There is a language that we need to discuss and we need to debate and process, and I would like for us to have conversations in April next month to gather and talk about words. Do we like these? Do we agree with these? Can we vote for these? And how we would vote for these. But today, just for today, for the service, I invite us to focus on the experience of change. To think about what it is, how we experience it, what it is for us like when some things change. And you may think about some things, not just about our faith changing, because this is a big one, our faith is changing, but also some things in your life that you are encountering, things that might be changing. What it is like for you to go through this change. Is there push and pull? Is there this wanting to change and then also not wanting to maybe go through it? There's always this process of emotional struggle when we go through the change. Let's focus on that for now. And I prepared some props and some ritual for us to go through, to work through that emotional part of what it requires to experience change, to go through change. Whenever there is a change...
It's going to be in addition to what we already have?
No, it will replace this. It will replace this. So this will change, right? So some things will not be there anymore. And when that happens, there is grief. There's sadness. That something that we came to love and care about is not going to be there anymore. So what I would like to do is to invite you to come forward and place a rock on the table to symbolize the grief and loss that happens with this change. And if it's not our faith change, maybe there's something in your life that's changing. Place a rock for your life change that you're going through to symbolize the grief for things that are no longer the same. Just placing them here. And then there's always also a little bit of hope, sometimes a lot of excitement about new things that are happening. So let's hope this tree bloom. These are sticky notes. Help it bloom by coming up and placing a flower. And if this doesn't stick, we have, it's a tricky sticking part. But we have the Scotch tapes here to help with that sticking part. But allow yourselves to embrace the newness, even if we may not be ready today, but just symbolically embrace the newness. It's beautiful. I need to look at it. I didn't get to look at these. Oh,
Isn't that nice?
We really made it bloom. Kind of like springtime. Nice. Thank you so much for participating in this process. I think if you can make it bloom, if we all work together, we can make it bloom. And we always know that love is at our center. Love will guide the way. May love guide our way from today on to help us live into that new world that lies ahead of us.